So today's video, we were gonna talk about this thing back here. This is an all AMD build that I'm doing in the Antec DP501. It looks nice, all white and black, but again, problems. This time I think it's not my fault, but I could be wrong. If you might notice, if you watch the top of the screen, you get a flicker every now and then, and it just does that. And at first, well, I know a lot of you guys are gonna throw some comments down below on what you think it is. Let me just tell you what I did to try to figure it out, and then you'll know where I'm at now, and you can let me know what you think it is, because you might have seen it, and you might save the day, which I would greatly appreciate. But first thing I did after building this PC, booted up, noticed that was a problem, and I was like, whoa, probably a driver's issue. Let me reinstall Windows, make sure AMD drivers, chipset drivers, anything AMD from the last time we did this is up to date, and I did it, booted back up, still an issue. Then I was like, well, the GTX 1080 still works. Let me throw that bad boy in here, plugged it in there, no problems. Everything runs smooth, no flicker, no nothing. I was like, whoa. Seems like it's a graphics card. Got a hold of the seller on Amazon that I bought it from. Requested a new one. It showed up yesterday, and I was like, perfect, just in time for today's or this weekend's video. Plugged it in, and yeah, still the problem. I was like, how can that possibly be that two graphics cards would come in with the same issue? It's very unlikely. Still not a driver's issue. Everything's up to date. I was like, maybe it's just a system. The graphics card doesn't like being in this system. So I threw it my test bench, which is an Intel 7700K build. Same issue. But the 1080 does not have that issue in there. So I'm at loss for words. I reached out to the supplier to see if they had any idea. And if that doesn't work, I might just have to go RTX, which is a bummer. I wanted to be all AMD. I'm trying to love you, AMD. But every time I build an AMD system, I'm just bad, I guess. I don't know. So let me know what you guys think. If you notice in the system, if you look back here, there is the Wraith Prism cooler on my AMD CPU, and I painted it white because I wanted a little more white in the build. It came out good. But while I was doing that, it got me thinking, what if you didn't want to use, the stock cooler that comes with AMD and you want to use an AIO? What performance do you lose if you were to paint an AIO? So I have a Silverstone PF240 right here. We're going to paint it and see if it murders its performance or if it looks good, because I think it would look good in this build if we had a nice white PF240. So let's get going. First thing I got to do is obviously hook it up to my test bench, see what it does in its stock configuration. Then we got to tape it up. I've painted a lot of things, and the biggest thing about it is you got to tape good. If you tape good at the beginning, you're going to have a good result. If you just go all willy-nilly, it comes out, well, willy-nilly. And the biggest problem that I always have too is that just don't touch it. Paint it and leave it sit overnight, 24 hours. Don't get impatient like I normally do and be like, looks dry. Touch it, fingerprints, and ripperoni. You got to start over, or you're just like, well, that's just how it is now. So that's what we're going to do first. So let's get on with that before we get on with painting. Get this out of the way. So we did our baseline run, so we got the numbers for that. Now we're going to get everything ready to be painted. First thing I like to do, well, I like to use blue painter's tape, X-Acto knife, and then before you paint a radiator, especially if you've been using it, blow it out, because we're going to be painting the fin stack here, the fins, so we want to make sure we get the paint in there, not on any dust. It just helps things stick better. For the fans, depending on what kind you got, sometimes if you give it a little bit of pressure, you can get the blades to pop out, or you can tape over them, which is normally safer, but we'll see if these will. There we go. I don't want to paint the blades, so I think that we can pop them out without doing any damage. So that's what we're going to do. Just paint the frame. Actually, that one came out pretty easy. So keep those off. Those will be unpainted. We don't have to worry about any overspray. We're going to paint the frames. We'll get these bumpers off here too. They're normally just stuck on there. Yeah, so we'll take all those off, mask everything up, and I mean, when you're painting something, this is the most important part, so take your time. The better job you do taping, the better product you're going to have. So. So here's our finished product. It's probably the only Silverstone PF240 that's out in the world that's matte white, but I think it looks pretty good. Big thing you notice with shaker can paint jobs is they might look good from far away, but when you get close, you can definitely tell that somebody spray painted it. And this didn't actually come out too bad. There's some spots that obviously could have used some better attention to detail, but for what it is, the paint that I used actually did quite a good job. It's a 2-in-1 paint and primer. It goes on nice and thick. Doesn't run really easy, so the finish looks really good. But the question is, do you lose performance? The idea being that you add a layer of paint over your radiator and you kind of insulate the radiator itself, and it has a hard time, radiating that heat into the atmosphere. Is that true? We're going to find out. But also, if you're getting ready to do this, you must know that if you paint something, you're probably not going to be able to RMA it if it should break. So if you're going to paint one of your components, make sure you do it to something that you could stand losing if it dies. Just keep that in mind if you're going to paint anything. Also, again, like I said, take your time, and you're not going to be able to paint everything. So like these bumpers that are black, this braided tubing, it's going to stay black. I mean, you could paint it, but it's going to look absolutely horrible. They do make coverings for the tubing, and you could probably get some white rubber and cut it out. But what I always do is if I can't paint something, I try to tie that color in, like the black ring around the neck of the RGB water block. I don't want to cover up the RGB, so I just kind of taped it all off, and it kind of ties the whole theme together. Because even if you do an all white build or an all black build or whatever color, you're not going to be able to do just that color. You're going to have pieces of red or pieces of black. It depends on the manufacturer of your motherboard, but normally PCBs are black, and this will help tie it into the system as a whole. But enough rambly-ambly. Let's put it in the system and see how performance looks. So how did we do? Well, at first glance, you don't look here yet. At first glance, doesn't seem like we did too bad, but when you look at the bigger picture, you can definitely see that the paint had a negative effect. So for run-of-the-mill 2-in-1 shaker can spray paint, don't paint your radiator. You're gonna have a bad time. It's gonna increase your temperature. I mean, it's still usable, and it does actually look good, in my opinion. But I bet there's some better paint out there that I'll have to maybe research into. If you guys know of a better paint to be used on like radiators and stuff, I know that there's automotive grade stuff that's made for hot surfaces and like engine blocks and stuff like that. So maybe I'll do a little bit of research and we'll revisit this. But for the time being, I would not recommend using just regular run-of-the-mill 2-in-1 spray paint for your radiator, because it is going to increase your temperature. As we all expected, adding that little layer of paint and primer to your rad makes it harder for it to radiate heat, which makes it harder for your CPU to stay cool. So the more you know. But until next time, see ya.